Hi, and welcome to our monthly wrap-up. This month at Veritas, we've been talking all about compassion. We've been talking about self-compassion and compassion towards others as well. A really interesting topic, and one that we wanted to sort of bring into not just the world of well-being, but also of performance as well. And we hope that you've sort of picked up through the different blogs and podcasts that the benefit that compassion can play, not just in helping to stave off things such as depression, anxiety, and stress, but also in actually helping us achieve our best, whether that be at work or whatever other pursuits we have in life as well. So, as I mentioned before, an interesting month. We've actually produced an extra blog this month, producing 5 rather than 4, just because of the size and nature of the topic of compassion and the different ways that we can be looking at it. So Mitch M started off the month really well by setting a good foundation in understanding what compassion is and how we were going to define compassion moving forward through this month. And the way he looked at it and the way he described it to us, which I thought was really interesting and really powerful, is that compassion is empathy coupled with a drive to resolve the individual's distress through practical means. So combining the concept of sitting or being with someone in their distress and with the doing with. So how are we going to move through this? Understanding that things happen to us, but we do have an element of a control in how we respond to them and try to pick the best, most constructive, value-orientated way to responding those needs for compassion. What we also looked at was the fact that it's not even just reacting to another person's distress, but also our own as well. So we also spend a lot of time looking at not just how we can be compassionate to others, but how we can be compassionate to ourselves and the role that that plays in our journey as well. So as we move through to compassion, as we define compassion, we then obviously wanted to look at the 4 major areas of benefit that we all receive from compassion, starting at that ground foundational level. So the number one was it increases happiness. Yeah, by understanding that we are going to have setbacks, that we are going to make mistakes, we allow ourselves to enjoy the positives more. We allow ourselves to experience more positive emotions, move through them, and remember that whenever we do make a mistake, whenever we do act against our values, or someone else does, someone else lets us down, someone else fails, that it is simply a moment in time. We are not a bad person forever. We are a bad person in this moment. We are not a failure forever. We have just failed in this instance. It helps us to compartmentalize things so that we can move on and move back to that state of happiness so that we can appreciate the positive we're doing now, despite the negative that might have happened 5 minutes ago, 5 days ago, 5 weeks ago, 5 months ago. The second was improved self-esteem. So by being compassionate and understanding that we are going to make mistakes and that's just part of being human, we don't let it rattle our complete sense of confidence and self-worth as well. It helps normalize those mistakes for us as well. It can help us to see that we are not the only ones that sometimes let ourselves down, sometimes make mistakes or fail. It's part of life. And that if we are able to sit with that disappointment for a while, but then be practical in how we want to move through it, we can then learn from those mistakes, learn from those setbacks, learn from those losses to improve us for the future as well. Already mentioned it, but one of the primary benefits of being compassionate to ourselves and to others is it helps reduce the rates of depression, anxiety, and stress. We're less down on ourselves. We're less down about our situation if we're compassionate. We're less worried about potential failures, and we're less preoccupied by potential fails or future setbacks or the results of what setbacks might mean to us as well. And then thirdly, by being compassionate to others, we can form stronger relationships. In fact, I'll actually make that a bit more of a broader statement. Being compassionate to ourselves can actually help us form stronger relationships as well. The reason being we're able to practice empathy, we're able to understand where others are coming from and what they might be experiencing and why that's impacting them. But then also through practicing compassion to ourselves, we can, further that understanding of empathy and what others might be going through. We can relate to others going through a moment of needing compassion as well. So one of the more interesting topics or sides of the compassion topic that we spoke about this month for myself was really the concept of being compassionate to ourselves and how we practice that. And a concept that I try to challenge with clients in a lot of the work I do, which is that perfectionism is the thief of happiness and perfectionism is the thief of progressive performance improvement. So to be compassionate, we need to acknowledge that failures, losses, and mistakes are all part of it. They're inevitable. There is no way that we're going to be going through life without at some point making a mistake. That our development towards acquiring skills, climbing the corporate ladder, is going to require us to sit in a space where we make mistakes, where we are not competent, where we're learning new things. And if we're open to that, if we are open to learning through those experiences, to utilizing mistakes as learning opportunities, then our progress goes further. And part of that is being compassionate, showing compassion to ourselves in these things, not comparing ourselves to others, but being compassionate within, allowing ourselves to make mistakes so that we accept them. If we don't allow ourselves to make mistakes and accept mistakes, we can't improve from mistakes. So compassion does hold a really strong place in pursuits of excellence as well. So that was one thing I just wanted to touch on before we go further in. So through that definition of compassion, through looking at compassion for others and ourselves and the benefits of compassion, we then broke compassion into four main components. So kindness, mindfulness, common humanity. We then looked at compassion in regards to its three main areas: kindness, mindfulness, and common humanity. Kindness is, again, like I said, being willing to openly understand where mistakes are going to come from and accepting that they're going to happen. And if we use them correctly, they're not terrible things to happen. Mindfulness is being able to make space for the now, acknowledge how I am responding to this. How am I responding to this setback? What is going through my mind at the moment? And then common humanity is looking for commonality with others, that we all make mistakes as well. So when they combine to make compassion, they do so in this way. If we're kind to ourselves and kind to others, when we make mistakes, we connect better. When we're mindful, when we are able to stop and acknowledge what is happening for myself in this moment, being aware of what's happening for myself, we can better recognize mistakes or recognize setbacks when they occur. And when we practice common humanity, looking at ourselves, looking at others that might have been in our situation that make mistakes, we feel normal. We feel part of the tribe, part of the group, and that this is just part of the process as well. Practicing those three areas, you create compassion. Again, defining compassion as empathy coupled with the drive to resolve what is causing the distress for ourselves or others through practical means. So that problem-solving element as well. And when we add in that problem-solving element, just to go back for a moment, it really transitions compassion from a soft skill to a hard skill, right? Because we're coming to be action-orientated. We're giving ourselves a set of behaviors to follow through with to move beyond this point. It's not just about stopping and hugging and kissing and saying it'll be all right, but coming up with a plan to actually make it all right and make it better from this instance. So, flowing back into how we can be compassionate for ourselves, because I really think that this is the part that we get stuck on when we're practicing compassion, right? Like, it's all well and good to be kind to them and kind to the others, but I've got responsibilities, I've got expectations, I need the best for myself. And that's really where we can get unstuck. So, it was really good when we saw Kate come with three really practical tips to practicing self-compassion. The first was reversing the roles. So if you're struggling to be compassionate to yourself, if you're being really harsh on yourself, you're finding yourself perfectionistic, you're not being able to let go of a setback, stop, practice mindfulness, come to where the center, come to here, be aware, be present with our thoughts and focused, and ask ourselves, what would we tell someone else in this situation to do? What advice would we give them in regards to reacting and moving through this situation? Often when we take it, we pull out the situation from ourselves and remove it, e.g. giving it to someone else who's hypothetical, we can actually see it a lot clearer and see the opportunities or avenues of responses. When it's inside our head, we're seeing it within ourselves, we're not giving ourselves another avenue to look at it. It can seem very one-dimensional and hard to decipher. So if you're struggling to practice self-kindness, don't forget to reverse the roles. If your child came up to you expressing what you're struggling with, what advice would you give them? A friend, your partner, colleague, whatever it might be. The second is self-awareness. So to be kind to ourselves, we need to understand that we always tell ourselves a certain narrative about the situation that we're in. We always paint a picture, paint a story, see it through a tunnel vision as to either what works best for us or helps us make sense of the situation in front of us. But there's always another side of the coin. There's always pros and cons. There's always different ways to view the same experience. A really quick example is if you and two friends were walking down the street and you met a dog, same dog, you could have three very different responses to that dog. One person might see threat, one person might see positive cuddles, kisses, and the other person might have no reaction to the dog as well. Now, the point of that example is that the same event and how we respond to that same event can be vastly different. So by practicing self-awareness, by taking time to notice what is the narrative I'm telling myself about this situation? Am I telling myself that this is a fatal mistake that I can never bounce back from? Am I hyper focusing on this situation? Am I hyper thinking about the impact that this situation could have on my life or my career or my relationships. What else can I tell myself? What else can I focus on in this situation? Can I still focus on the learnings? Can I still focus on getting it 80% correct instead of 100? What else can I tell myself? Is what I am telling myself currently accurate? Or is it hyper exaggerated? Am I black and white thinking? Am I fortune telling, e.g., creating a problem for myself that actually hasn't occurred yet? And then ask yourself, what would happen if you twisted this narrative? If you perceive this situation in a different way, if you focused on a different set of the triggers or components of this situation, if you looked at it in a different manner, how would you be responding to it? Would your stress levels go up or down? Would your logical brain be more empowered or disempowered? Would you be likely to perform better or worse if you saw it in that avenue? Because at the end of the day, the only reason you will or will not onboard that narrative is if you choose to. It is 100% in your control. And then finally, perspective. What does this truly mean? What does this situation truly mean to my life? So a little bit like self-awareness as well, but is this going to be one area of one issue in one part of my life, or is it in every single part of my life? Can I have a challenge here, but still appreciate the good things that are happening in the other area of my life? So again, trying to step back from the situation, step back from the setback, and having a look at where it truly impacts our life. What else? What good is still happening? And what will life look like 5 years from now? Even if I do fail at this, what will life look like in 5 years? What size of impact will this have had on my life in 5 years' time? Will I still be ruminating about it every day? Or would it just be part of the tapestry of who I am now? Would I even remember this incident, this moment? Or would it be so beyond in the past that it doesn't even matter anymore? Because in the moment, everything seems really important. Gaining perspective can help us to understand and deleverage the amount of impact or risk that we're putting on this situation. As always, we wanted to look at what role our theme of the month plays in the workplace. So what role does compassion play in the workplace? And again, Kate spoke to some really good and interesting points here around the role that being more compassionate to yourself and your teammates plays in actually helping you to produce higher quality work, in addition to, as you would assume, having better quality relationships with your colleagues. And of course, those two are interconnected as well. By having better quality relationships with your colleagues, you're always going to produce better work. But even besides that, compassion can help you just straight away produce better quality work. And the main reason is, again, because to practice compassion is to remove the perfectionistic mindset. It is to help us operate from an achievement-oriented mindset opposed to perfectionism, which is about fear of failure. So if we've got a fear of failure in place, we are distracted from achieving what we want to achieve. We're more focused on what the potential outcome of a failure would be, as opposed to what could happen if we get this right. Much more motivating, much more empowering, much more disempowering and distracting as well. Because we all know the issues of making a mistake at work. There's no point focusing on it more. It's about moving into the opportunity of what this could present. So it can help us to become much more goal orientated and focused, because we're taking away the enormity of making a mistake. And the 4 tools that Kate provided us in regards to how we can practice compassion in the workplace was obviously first noticing. Noticing when ourselves and others are in situations that might require compassion. Are we trying something we've never tried before? Is this learning a new skill? Is this onboarding a new system, onboarding a new product within the business that is going to have errors? And we need to practice compassion for ourselves and others. Noticing when we might need to step back and take compassion. Interpretation. So this is a good one as well, particularly in regards to quality of work. Making sure that we are practicing interpretation. So stopping, practicing mindfulness and understanding what bias and viewpoints am I bringing to this decision, to this incident, to my staff at the moment. Because we, again, all have natural biases. We have our preferences. We have interpreting information in a way that makes us feel better about ourselves. We all have a natural bias. By stopping and interpreting how that bias is impacting my decision making, my approach to this situation, I can practice compassion, change my perspective if necessary, or understand why someone else might be coming with a different of opinion. And if we look at those points, we can have meaningful discussion to come to an agreement, to come to an area of collaboration as well. And it helps us to not see everything one-eyed, to question ourselves as well. Because our automatic thought or response to a situation will be 100% will be influenced by our biases. And that can sometimes lead us down the way only view things in a certain manner, and it's always hard to retract. Then, of course, there's feeling. So being able to make sure that we are practicing empathy in the workplace as well. So making sure we are making space to feel, making sure it's okay to feel disheartened or stressed in the workplace. Natural responses to high levels of stress, and work is stressful. So make sure feeling has a place in the workplace. Acknowledging a feeling is not succumbing to a feeling. Saying I am stressed does not mean I'm overwhelmed, it means I'm stressed. And finally, of course, the key to practicing compassion is action. So actively showing compassion to others. By showing compassion, by setting the scene and culture that we want in the workplace, we're then more likely to receive it from others as well. So be the culture you want to see in the workplace. Show compassion. Even if others aren't, make sure you're representing that and showing compassion. And finally, just want to briefly talk about the podcast I did with Genoa from Momentum, and he is the meditation guru. We had a big discussion about the power of compassion and the role compassion played in his journey for him getting to where he is now. But one of the really interesting and important topics that we spoke about there was actually being compassionate about your compassion. So compassion is a skill, practicing it, but you're not going to be compassionate every time. You might be exhausted, fatigued, stressed, whatever it might be, and it might mean that at times you show more compassion than others. And that's fine. As long as you're continuously learning to try and practice compassion as much as you can, don't beat yourself up too much if you slip up every now and then, and be a bit sharp with someone else or be a bit sharp with yourself. Understand that you will need compassion to practice compassion, and make sure you're looking after yourself when you're, or allowing yourself to go into that space with others and show compassion, show empathy, share their hurt in that moment as well. So that's all I wanted to talk about compassion today. Thank you very much for listening. Next month, we're talking about the power of challenges. So we're going to be looking at unpacking bravery. We're going to be learning how we can learn from setbacks and why challenges are important to us, why we need to be more often than not in a state of challenge if we want to be moving forward. And of course, we're going to be using it to celebrate International Women's Day, which is also coming up in March. And its theme as well is the power of challenge. So a really interesting month coming up. Hope you join us, hope you engage, and I look forward to catching you next month.